Hello! I'm wearing my almost famous ugly shirt that I got for $4. How are you doing? I meant to actually post this video yesterday, but I was so busy. I was working until 4 a.m. Oh my goodness. I even decided to do a live stream, and I don't know what I was thinking doing that. That wasn't very wise of me. I love coming up with ingenious analogies to make people understand things. Everybody keeps asking, usually people don't ask about the photoelectric effect. They ask about the Michelson-Morley experiment, which is extremely laughable, and I've explained it a million times. But the big one they keep asking about is the dual slit experiment. Here's the secret of the dual slit experiment, by the way. Dual slit experiment is really a genuine IQ test. Just remember that. It's an IQ test. I've seen probably 150 videos about, people as intelligent as a pet rock to slightly more intelligent than amoeba, trying to explain to you wave-particle duality. And this is all offsetting the fact that there's not a single person on this earth, and absolutely nobody on this earth can disagree with me because it's 100% irrefutable, is that you can't talk about the outcome of an experiment when the medium or the subject that you're experimenting on is an unknown. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you know this or not, and you do know this, the medium of the experiment, of the dual slit experiment, is light. I don't care if it's coherent light or incoherent light, doesn't make any difference. Yeah? What if I told you to, here's a piece of actually this is a piece of leather, but it'd be no different than a fabric. What if I took this piece of fabric, which is actually leather, and I did this number with it? And I said, well, if you look at the fabric this way, it looks like a wrinkle. But if I look at it like this, it's raised up, kind of like a pyramid, it looks like a pinch. So sometimes we look at light, it looks like a wrinkle. And the other way we look at light, it looked like a pinch. See, when you see the pinch, you don't see the wrinkle. And when you see the wrinkle, you don't see the pinch. People came up with this crazy idea of the observer effect. Well, it depends on who's observing it. It does different things if you're looking at it. Kind of like that old saying that a watch pot never boils. You remember that one? You know how many different interpretations of the dual slit experiment there are? This is the short list. You got the de Broglie-Bohm theory. You have the many worlds theory. You have the relational interpretation. You have the Copenhagen theory. You have the complementary theory. And then you got the standard quantum theory of the explanation of the dual slit experiment. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's also, too, 100% irrefutable in it being Mother Nature is a hairy pit chick. She doesn't have a calculator, and there are no dualities in nature, in implying an inherent contradiction. This isn't a duality to talk about a pinch wrinkle either. Depends on what we're looking at. Are we looking at the same building from the sunny side, or are we looking at the same building from the shadow side? It's like, well, over here it's very bright and pretty and shiny. No, it's not. I'm over here. And it's dark and ugly looking. They're both looking at the same building, but they're looking at it from the lit side versus the shadow side. This, and once again, I really do have to reiterate that the dual slit experiment is an actual IQ test. And these people reify things that don't exist. There is no such thing in this universe as a wave. A wave is not a thing, rather what something does. And there is no such thing as a wave, if we're talking extemporaneously, that exists without a medium. A wave is a reference to a medium, kind of like waves in the ocean. Look at them waves out there. You mean the waves on the water. That's right, I just said waves there. I kid you not, and I've watched more videos on the dual slit experiment because I find them very, very, very funny. These people have reified, and reification is building something out of something that doesn't exist. It's like arguing about what color unicorns are. How tall are they? How long is the horn of a unicorn? These people reify things that don't actually exist. Light requires a compounded field. Specifically, it's a pinch wrinkle in the ether. It's kind of a crude yet very, very simple analogy. We can talk about this lava lamp. Well, look, here's a lava particle, but over here when it's undulating, that's the wave. So we have a wave-particle duality of the contents of the lava lamp. Well, that's just completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. But getting back on track, because to me this is incredibly funny, and it just illuminates how incredibly unintelligent humanity is. And that's not my opinion, that's a fact. Nobody on Earth can do an experimentation on anything without knowing what it is you're experimenting on. The medium is light. All of these people are completely confused as to what light is. All of them. Nikola Tesla told you what light is. He called it a sound wave of the ether. And of course, sound and light have a whole lot in common. And the same is true of water. You can actually have the constructive-destructive interference pattern of the dual slit experiment with water and sound. He said light was the sound wave of the ether. Well, the things they have in common is sound's not an emission. Sound has a frequency, and interestingly enough, light has a frequency. But when we say frequency, we're talking about one thing. That is how many cycles per second, or waves, because cycles, frequency, waves, perturbation, disturbance, these are all the exact same thing, different words. Sound is not an emission. Nothing emits sound. Sure there is. Speed of sound. That is exactly like light. That is the hysteresis of the medium. That is also, too, the rate of induction at which the medium can occur. This is what Nikola Tesla referred to as the ratio between elasticity and density of the ether, i.e., the medium. Light is not an emission, and neither is sound. Nothing emits sound, but we all suffer that delusion. The pinch wrinkle, and that's what light is, it's a pinch wrinkle. There's no such thing as a photon. There's no such thing as an electron, and that's not me saying that. That's Nikola Tesla and all the gods of field theory. They said the same thing. It's easy to completely dismantle, like a stack of Legos, all these people with PhDs. I have a PhD in theoretical physics. How dare you? He says, excuse me, sir. So you think the flow of power is flow of electrons? It is. You know, you can't explain wireless power induction with the flow of electrons. And then when you say that, someone will bring up the electron microscope. So an electron microscope, accurately described, is an electrostatic reflectance imager. I actually had another session, and it's not a dream. I was talking about this in live stream a few days ago. That other entities I was having a teaching session with, you know, wanted to know what a battery is, because we all know what a battery is. Oh, that's a battery right there. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't give you an idea of what a battery is. You remember those old, you're probably not old enough to remember it, they had these little balsa wood airplanes. You'd punch out the balsa wood, the body of the airplane, and the wings, and it came with a little plastic propeller you stuck in the end of the body, and it came with a rubber band. You attached the rubber band, the propeller, and the hook on the back of the plane. You sat there with your finger and you spun up the propeller, which torqued the rubber band into a bunch of... And you let your finger go, and the propeller would start to spin from the torques of the countless twists in the rubber band. You let it go, and the little airplane would... But you don't have... kids are so jaded these days. That's not a toy anymore. It used to be a toy. The easiest way to explain a battery, like on some parallel world where more advanced beings existed, they'd probably have one word for it like we do, battery. But what is a battery? I was having a teaching session, and I was explaining things, because saying battery doesn't, that's just a word. What a battery is a dielectric torque box, or object. Dielectric torque. Kind of like that rubber band, you're able to put a bunch of torque into it and you let it go. Yeah, and of course when you hook up the positive and negative, which isn't actually a negative, it's a discharge node. Battery doesn't actually have a negative charge contact, but it's a dielectric torque box. If you say that to somebody, then they actually have a far, far, far better idea what a battery is. The same is true of light. We actually all live with these false suppositions about light because we're taught this stuff in high school and college and whatnot, and it's like, well, this is what light is because you got a guy with a piece of paper hanging on the wall, says he's an expert, and he told us what light is. This is a wave-particle duality. Wave-particle duality is a brain rot psychosis. That's not my opinion, that's a fact. It's a brain rot psychosis. There can be no dualities in nature. A pinch wrinkle of the ether, which is what light is. All fields are ether perturbation modalities, and light is just a compound ether perturbation. Technically, it's a blinking torus, instead of calling it a pinch wrinkle, except I think a lot of people know what a torus is, but saying a blinking torus actually gives you the entire pattern of the compound nature of light. You say blinking torus, people don't get it, but if you say a pinch wrinkle like a piece of fabric, I think people are able to get it a whole lot better. But it's just constructive and destructive interference. This spatially separated, of course, brings the light out of phase. And when people talking about the observer effect is brain rot squared. It's brain rot on top of brain rot. Because this same experiment, and I just watched this Fermilab. I thought, well, let's look at Fermilab. These are the experts! I just watched it again. I think I've seen it many, many, many years ago. Fermilab, you know, the experts. Oh, these people have PhDs. It's just like nothing but a bunch of PhDs. They'll tell you in the video from Fermilab, because they have no idea what light is. They say, man, dual slit experiment is really mysterious. You know, you got the observer effect, and when you look at it this way, it's a bunch of photons. There's no such thing as a photon. And it's just a compression. Light is a rarefaction and compression, which is what a pinch wrinkle is. You actually have a set number of cycles per second we call frequency, which is a wave perturbation or disturbance. It's just a compound pinch wrinkle, but there's no such thing as a photon, any more than there's any such thing as an electron. That's a complete misnomer. Even the guy that discovered the principle of the electron, J.J. Thomson, told you exactly what it is. It's 1 unit of dielectric induction. And that's what a battery is, by the way. It's a dielectric torque box. You remember when I was talking about spinning up the rubber band? When you actually charge your battery, not that there's a rubber band inside of a battery, but you're essentially putting a bunch of torque in a rubber band that drives that little plastic propeller, and you let the little balsa wood airplane, which is very lightweight, you let it go. Whee! Man, that was a real toy when I was younger. Every little Kmart store and Woolworths, they had a balsa wood airplane. And it came with a plastic propeller and a rubber band. And that was real fun. To me, that's still real fun. This reason, I think that's part of the intellectual de-evolution of folks these days, is that they grow up with iPads. Yeah, and they don't actually 3D visualize things. They don't build and create things, and they don't think dimensionally. That's part of the brain rot people have. But all of this is a wave-particle duality. It's just nothing but a brain rot psychosis. The interference pattern you see is just simplex constructive and destructive interference. I actually had a video from countless years ago, almost nobody saw it, not the eye of the needle, which of course has 2 bars on either side of the eye, but the shaft of the needle. It's just pointing a laser dead center at the shaft of the needle, and it creates the exact same interference pattern. When you actually have spatial separation of the light, because if you understand that light is not moving and it doesn't have a speed, then every vector or Cartesian coordinate where the new light is generated and destroyed, because that's the correct way to look at light. Every microscopic nanometer, which is incredibly small, occurrence of the disturbance of light, you actually have either in phase or out of phase. And this is spatial divergence, which means that each new point is a new source location. And each new source location, if it's divergent, it's spatially divergent, then you actually have interference. And the only way you could, you see, these people, like the Fermilab people, they use the words spooky and strange and bizarre over and over and over again, those words, in trying to explain the dual slit experiment. And the only reason they do that is because they have a brain rot that light is over here it's a wave and over here it's like a particle, but they're kind of both together. And Einstein talked about this, but it's the incorrect way of looking at light. I mean, that's just total brain rot. It's particle-based brain rot, or materialism specifically. These fools are reifying waves, but you have to ask them. Next time, if you're in college, say, you know, your scientist professor says waves, say, excuse me, just interrupt them. Say, waves of what? Like, what? You keep talking about waves. Like, yeah. Waves of what? Waves require a medium. There ain't no such thing in this whole universe as waves without a medium. Waves of what? They'll say, energy. Which is even better because they've never, ever defined the term energy. And then you'll say, sure they did. You go to Wikipedia, it says energy is the ability to do work, which is descriptive but not explicative, which means you've accurately described something, but you haven't explained it. And until you can explain it, you don't understand it. So the whole idea of the dual slit experiment starts out with 8 false suppositions about the nature of the medium that you're testing, and they have no idea what light is, and that's not my opinion, that's a fact. That's why the geniuses at Fermilab that have, you should go look at their video, is at least 8 or 9 times they talk about the dual slit experiment observations from the experiment. It's spooky, it's weird, it's bizarre, it's confusing. Well, it would be if you had materialistic brain rot that thought that light was a wave and a particle and a wave-particle duality. It's none of those things. It's absolutely impossible. These are their words, not mine, by the way. The 2-photon double-slit experiment, there's no such thing as a photon, demonstrates quantum entanglement in wave-particle duality by using 2 correlated photons, where each photon can be thought of as passing through both slits, even though they are detected individually. Unlike the single-photon experiment, 2-photon versions show an interference pattern in the joint detection rates of the photon pairs. Quantum entanglement, the dual-slit experiment, relies on the entanglement of photon pairs. Well, there's no such thing as a photon. I know where all their false suppositions come from. They think that light is a particle and a wave and a duality and that it's moving and that it has a speed, and all of those things are false. 100% false. By using a special tool, you can actually send light particles through the slits one by one. No, you can't. There's no such thing as a light particle. It's ridiculous. The photoelectric effect is about electrovoltage at higher frequencies where they become measurable entities, or pinches of the medium. The pinch in the medium, of course, would be the ether. It's like, look, here we have nothing. Here we're going to put a pinch. This is exactly what they're doing. This is as simple as it could possibly get. You got the ether. You actually release some energy. You create a pinch in the ether. You have a bunch of pinches that, like, ooh, look, it's sticking up there. It's like a speed bump on the road of fields. This is a photon right here, because our detector, when it's passing, when this passes across our detector, boop! Oh, look, there's a photon. And a pinch, which is a compression in the pinch wrinkle of the ether, or the compound circuit of light, is where they're getting the idea of a photon from. Everything that they think they understand, they don't understand, and I know where, why, and how they're coming up with the false conclusions that they're making. This is what Nikola Tesla meant by those who could think deeply, but not clearly. However, the later discovery of the photoelectric effect demonstrated that under different circumstances, light can behave as if it is composed of discrete particles. These seemingly contradictory discoveries, not contradictory at all unless you think light is a wave and a particle and a wave. There's nothing contradictory about a pinch wrinkle of the ether, which is just no different than saying a compound field modality. I mean, it's really not compound. It's basically a blinking torus with a set frequency. And the frequency is corresponding to the capacitance, or the energy of the light. Made it necessary to go beyond classical physics and take into account the quantum nature of light. And by the way, in case you didn't know this, all of quantum, not my opinion, fact, is based upon what they think light is, but they have no idea what light is. This demonstrates the wave-particle duality, which states all matter exhibits both wave and particle properties. Wave is not a property, it's an attribute of something else. Here's a wave. It's like, that's my hand moving. I'm burning calories moving my hands. A wave! A wave of what? A wave! Every time some scientist or fool talks about waves in relationship to energy, interrupt them. Say, waves of what? Like, what? You keep talking about waves, yo. Waves of what? You're so dumb. The center has to hold. Everything has to point to a simple explanation. All observed effects, including the entire double-slit experiment. The center holds in divine simplicity. Occam's razor must be an immovable guidepost, and the center must hold. You can't make nature into a laughable absurdity. You know, a clown car full of nonsense that, well, 9 out of 10 experts agree that this is the accurate explanation of light, the wave-particle duality. Well, who are you? Where's your PhD in theoretical physics? I have a PhD in common sense, logic, and wisdom, you know. Don't need a PhD in... PhD means piled high deeper. It means you're regurgitating the garbage you were taught to believe in. Here, this is the guru that came before you. We're not going to graduate you unless you agree with Guru Bada Bing. You know, he has a PhD in theoretical physics, blah, blah. Oh my God. These evil ideas of waves and these evil ideas of particles and evil ideas of dualities, this makes a mockery of nature. It complicates things to the point of absurdity. Nature is the hairy pit chick. She doesn't do this nonsense. There are no wave-particle dualities. Every idea that they have about the nature of light is wrong. And every idea that they have about light which is wrong, they will do an experiment, namely this one, and then draw conclusions. Well, we started out with the supposition that we were sure light was a wave and a particle and a duality, but in doing this experiment, it doesn't work. So it has to be both, and therefore it's a duality. And sometimes it's a wave, sometimes it's a particle, depending on how we look at it. You know, if we look at it like this, it's a pinch. And if we look at it like this, it's a wrinkle. A wrinkle would be analogous to a wave. You know, even the pinch wrinkle of this involves a piece of fabric. There is no such thing in this whole universe, and you cannot refute it and take this to anybody with a PhD. Say, excuse me, sir. Yes. You're a PhD in physics and theoretical physics? Yes, I am. You keep talking about wave. Yes, I do. There is no such thing in this universe as waves without a medium. To say waves itself posits a medium. Waves of water. Waves of light. Well, the waves are really frequency. When we say waves, we're talking about frequency. Well, frequency disturbance, perturbation, modulation. Yes. Well, you still have to posit a medium. You can't posit waves without a medium. Waves in the water, waves of light. Yeah, but what is light? It's energy. It's photons. Well, it's not. Well, sometimes it's a wave and a photon. It's really both. That's why it's a wave-particle duality. There are no dualities in nature. The center can't hold with what they posit. It's irrational, it's illogical, and that's not my opinion. It's undeniable. It breaks Occam's razor. It breaks common sense. It turns Mother Nature into a wackadoodle, which she is not. The dual-slit experiment is a genuine, true-to-life, honest-to-God, genuine IQ test. Humanity is intellectually unevolved. Anybody that wants to complicate and convolute nature to this point of absurdity doesn't deserve anybody's respect that has any common sense. Well, where's your PhD in theoretical physics? Let's just look at the facts as they are. The dual-slit experiment, well, you can't talk about it with me, and I can't talk about it with you unless we first establish what light is and what light is not. Someone said, what about the dual-slit experiment? We can't discuss it. Well, you don't understand it. I understand it perfectly. I've seen more commentary on the dual-slit experiment than all of you combined, and that is no lie. that we cannot talk about the dual slit experiment unless we talk about what light is and what light ain't. Yeah, I know ain't's not a word. All waves require a medium. Oh, nobody could talk about waves without positing a medium. Except the medium that they posit is space and time, but space and time are not mediums. Space is the opposite of the ether. Literally, it's the negative image of the ether. If we actually wanted to take the battery analogy further, the positive terminal would be the ether, and the negative terminal, which is not negative, it's actually a discharge terminal, would be the interlocutor between the two would be space, and the discharge terminal would be counter space or a ground. Everybody knows what an electrical ground is. There's no such thing as a negative charge. It's completely ridiculous. That's like saying your glass, when it was empty, it's got negative water in it. Over here we got a full glass of water, that's positive water. This empty glass has got water in it too, but it's negative water. It's so dumb. It's so irrational. That's the way these people think. That's the level of their intelligence, meaning none. If you think that you can break Occam's razor, countermand common sense, logic, and rationality, then you are part of another universe that I've never visited. So please God, don't ever mention to me the dual slit experiment unless we can agree upon what light is and what light is not. Because that is the medium upon which that experiment is performed. It's on light. Everything I've said in this video, by the way, I will state emphatically, is 100% irrefutable, undeniable, and unarguable. If you want to argue it, then show up on live stream. We'll argue it. We can let everybody sit back and eat their popcorn while we go back and forth about light and the dual slit experiment. And I can tell you right now who's going to win that argument. By all means, invite your professor into the chat room too. If you want me to record a FaceTime video debate with a PhD professor of theoretical physics on the dual slit experiment, I'm all game for that too. Just let me record it. Have the other party agree that I could post it up. Nobody would consent to it. There might be somebody unintelligent enough to consent to it. I'm all game for it. Let's do it. Put your money where your mouth is. Not literally, but I'm all game for it. Let's do it. Go find your favorite professor. We'll have a nice discussion about the dual slit experiment. Or about magnetism. Take your pick. I love debating. I don't shy away from debating. I just don't like doing stuff that doesn't pay the bills. Thank you so much for watching. If you like these videos, check out my free Substack articles below. I've been radically busy lately. I apologize for that. That's just my life. I have to do everything. There's nobody that helps me do anything. I have to do everything. And if you ever like these videos too, any donations always warmly welcome. I hope you have a lovely weekend. Lux e Veritas.